Hi everyone, welcome back. This is Katrina. This is part 3 of a screencast on improving teacher collaboration, a presentation I did a week ago at LEAD. Part 1 discussed strategies for building strong teacher leaders. Part 2 focused on building strong collaboration structures. Part 3 will now focus on improving conversations around data. So when we think about building collective teacher efficacy and collaboration, a key component is making sure teachers know how to use data efficiently and effectively and how to get results based on their data. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into with this segment. Some core ideas around this topic. Clear data protocols really provide a useful structure for analysis. Protocols can jumpstart powerful data-driven conversations, and clarity around how to use data and what to do with it builds confidence and purpose where teachers understand data, they understand what to do with it, and they can't wait to dig into it and plan with it. And that's really what helps build that idea of collective teacher efficacy. When we think about a protocol, let's first talk about what a protocol is. So when we think about a data protocol, it's really a set of steps or a process that helps teachers understand what data to look at and what to do with it. So it's kind of like a roadmap or DII process steps. When you look at designing a protocol, you want to think about what we do anytime when we develop a lesson. We want to look at backwards mapping. So make sure you're beginning with the end in mind. Think about what you want teachers to do with the data, what they should have at the very end, and then think about what should they look at. Are they looking at class results, target students, a specific standard, questions, student work, etc. Think about what process teachers should go through. Think about questions that will spark productive discussion, and then think about what plans should be developed and implemented. When building a protocol, I really want to emphasize the idea of keeping it simple. We made the mistake with some of our protocols of having them be overly complex and too many steps, and that's not efficient or effective. So we're working on scaling those back and constantly evaluating our protocols to make sure we have a uniform language, but at the same time, the work we're asking teachers to do is as simple and straightforward as possible. So what I want to take you through first is our common formative assessment protocol. This is our short cycle data analysis. Our teachers use these for any type of assessment. It can be a thinking map, short constructed response, multiple choice, etc. But something that really is quite short. It can even be just an exit ticket. It may not even require an extensive analysis system. It can be just one question. Again, used for 1 or 2 standards. This is not for a comprehensive assessment. So just looking at the structure of this, we have our teachers in teams identify how each class performed, looking at different proficiency levels. And then there's questions they use to facilitate a discussion around what went well and what was a weakness. In the next piece, they really dive into the student work and exemplar. They look for questions that were commonly missed between classes or in their class. They look for a rationale of why students missed the questions. They look for a gap between student work and a teacher exemplar, so they can really look at what students must know and do and where the misconception may lie. And then they identify the highest leverage misconception to repair the misunderstanding most quickly. So that's something that they complete as a team. And then in the next step, they look at planning their reteach. So once they've identified a high leverage misconception, typically by looking at maybe a high, medium, low piece of student work, then they look at how can we reteach this in a different way to really change student results. You'll notice on this last piece of our protocol, we have a math component. This is just something I would ignore. This is specific to CASEL because of our focus on number talks as a reteach strategy. However, the ELA portion, that setup could be used for math or ELA. Teachers identify whether the lesson should be small group or whole group. If it's small group, they identify specific students. They look at when they'll reteach and when they'll reassess. They identify a question for reassessment or a short quiz. They build another exemplar if needed so that the learning target is clear and they understand where they want students to go so that they can backwards map. And then they identify objectives, vocabulary, strategies, material, etc. to help do a strong reteach. So in summary, this protocol helps teachers identify strengths and talk about strategies that worked between classes and get ideas for reteaching. It helps them dive deep into student work and really identify the gap that needs to be addressed. It's not necessarily a reteach of the whole standard. There's a specific component they need to look at, and then it helps them plan a strong reteach that they can take and implement in their classroom. So nice and easy, clear transfer. The next data analysis protocol I'll talk about is called our calibration protocol. And when teachers calibrate, they are trying to ensure that they have a clear understanding of a rubric and that they're scoring work consistently. And this is something that they would do before grading or before doing a CFA on something that might have a short constructed response or a writing piece. So in this process, we follow the evidence analysis action ideas from impact teams. They start by looking at a rubric and reviewing key criteria for each level of proficiency. In the second piece, they analyze. They look at about 3 pieces of work from each team member, high, medium, low. They share these different examples of student work. Everybody looks at the piece, reviews it, scores it. They discuss the scores, citing the rubric. Differences are discussed, and then the team attempts to reach consensus. They repeat this process until everything is scored or until they feel like they have a clear understanding of how to score work. At the end, teams will finish scoring student work on their own, and then as a result of calibration, typically they may revise a rubric to clarify learning expectations if they find that the rubric had a gap based on the student work they saw, or they want to make it more clear. They will often find implications for instruction. A lot of times through this, even though they're not doing a formal data analysis, themes arise and they can take that back to the classroom and reteach. Like if they're noticing everyone's missing a central idea, they can take that back right away and review central idea with their students. And then they can talk about teaching the rubric more in depth with the students. The next tool we use is under construction. It is our interim analysis protocol. I've included it because you may get some good ideas from this. But when I mentioned earlier to keep data analysis simple, this is one of the tools that I feel like hasn't kept it simple. I feel like it's a little bit too much, and I think we can streamline it. And again, we want data analysis to be simple and efficient. I'm going to go ahead and go over the components anyway. Our interim analysis protocol is used for benchmark assessments, our quarterly or every 6 weeks assessment. So it's something that addresses multiple standards. Our teams look at scores for each class and discuss strengths and weaknesses, similar to the CFA protocol. They look at focus standards and identify how each class did in the area of the focus standards where they really emphasized instruction. In the next component, they look at how their target students performed. We ask our teachers to identify target students and really monitor their growth. The next piece, they look at an item analysis. So they will look based on their focus standards, identify questions connected to the standard and commonly missed questions, and analyze those and possible misconceptions that may have arisen. And then in the next piece, they look ahead. So they'll look at the next interim and do some backwards mapping, identifying their focus standards, question types, and strategies to implement in the classroom as they're teaching the unit. And in the last component, they set goals for the upcoming interim. So with the interim analysis protocol, it helps identify strengths, analyze focus standards, review target student data, analyze questions, plan reteach lessons, and establish goals. So this will be a good time to stop for discussion. Think about what I talked about in regards to data analysis and what key ideas resonated most with you. I'd like to know what practices you've implemented or maybe some practices that you would like to try. Before we close off, I just wanted to share how the practices we've implemented have impacted CASEL. Looking at investing in building our lead teachers' capacity, looking at building strong collaborative structures and data analysis, we have seen an impact. It's been a long journey and it's been a lot of work, and it definitely has been a bumpy road, but we have seen conversations and collaboration completely transform. And I have a couple of testimonials from 2 of our lead teachers just commenting on how it's impacted their teams. And you can see from their comments that it definitely has made a difference. And again, we continue to look at what we're doing and evaluate our practices, but we're on the right track and we're definitely seeing the effects of our efforts. And then just looking at some of our data, we definitely have a lot of data wins that we're very proud of. Several grade levels have strong growth in both subjects. We have a couple grade levels that may have growth in one subject or another, maybe some inconsistent growth in one of the subjects, but overall a lot of wins to celebrate, and we really attribute that to the structures we put in place. Just to kind of close out and wrap up the presentation with some closing thoughts, looking at building collective teacher efficacy, at CASEL we found that trained teacher leaders support teams and mobilize school growth. Clear collaboration expectations, structures, and deliverables have led to strong core instructions. Data analysis protocols have given teachers clarity and purpose. We have teachers who know what to look at and how to use the information in regards to data. And then some other components to remember are just start small. I presented a lot of information. You don't need to use everything. Figure out what would be highest impact for your team and where you would get the most buy-in, and start there. And then again, get input. A lot of things we just gave to our teachers, and if we had it to do over again, we would have slowed down a little bit and really worked on developing these tools as a team. And then just remember, it's a journey. It doesn't have to be perfect or clean. It can be a little bit messy. Our journey's definitely been messy, but it's still getting results, and that's okay. We continue to look for ways to improve and to refine our processes. I wanted to point out a few resources that contributed to the ideas in the presentation. Obviously, we have John Hattie's work looking at collective teacher efficacy. Leading impact teams really focuses on creating a culture of efficacy, and a lot of the ideas for data protocols came from that. Driven by Data by Paul Bambrick-Santoyo also provided a lot of the ideas around how to look at data and contributed to our protocols with some of the best practices for looking at data. And then finally, we have a toolbox with all the resources that were discussed in the presentation. I have all iterations. Again, I would suggest iteration 2, but you have both to look at. One of the benefits of having a grant is that we have resources and money to develop tools, and we want to use those to help not just CASEL, but any schools that are interested. So please take them. If you improve upon them and make them better, share them back so that we can get better too. And that's the end. Thank you for listening to the screencast. Please feel free to contact me with any questions. Thanks again. Hope this information helps.